and welcome to the April 1st, 2014 edition of the TetraCast. My name is Zack Reese. I'm your host. Joining us today is Adam Vitale.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going great. How's it going with you?
I've been busy this month, but doing good.
Great. It's good to hear. Next up, Simon Chun.
Dude, it's April Fool's. Why are we recording this on April Fool's?
It's a joke. It's this April Fool's. We're shutting down the site. Sorry, guys. It's been almost 8 years, and we decided now's a good time to quit. Let RPG fan have their way.
Wait. I wasn't made aware of this.
No, it's fine. It's all right. We were planning on giving like a bunch of games away, but we took it back. So
yeah. We'll give you like a leave paycheck. What is that called? Like when did they give you like
pension? Like a pension?
Is that what they give you? Yeah, I don't know.
Severance pay?
Yeah, that whatever the hell it's called. I don't know.
Pension comes a lot later. Severance pay, yes.
Not even 5 minutes in already dropping like F bombs.
Right.
I'm sorry, guys.
It goes away. It's fine.
Good job.
And then leaving out in the darkness alone by himself, David Kreinberg.
How's it going? What's up?
That's very nice of you to come in that way.
I'm just sleepy. So go on with your bullshit show. I'm kidding. April Fools.
That's so sad.
All right. Let's go.
That was terrible.
I'm sorry.
That was awesome.
I don't even know what to say, man.
It's great. No, it's fine. Let's continue on.
It's April Fools. I'm allowed to say things.
Sure. It's fine. You know, it's great to be alive today because March was an insane month for RPGs. Oh my God. Like everything under the sun was being released, and the next 2 months looking kind of crazy.
Yeah,
all the way up until E3. My God.
Dude, I can't believe E3 is coming around really soon. That's actually pretty...
That's like what? Like 65 days or something like that away?
Yeah,
Not even...
Basically 2 months away.
2 months away. So it's been 10 months. So it's been 10 months since we heard anything about Final Fantasy 15, right?
Pretty much.
Yep.
I mean, well, they kind of touched about it, saying, please wait.
We got that, what is it, 2 seconds of extra footage in TGS? Was that what it was?
Man, people were nuts about that. They actually were excited. And it's obviously, things are getting kind of desperate nowadays, and I don't blame them. Yep. It's been really crazy how long they've stretched things out, especially as we were kind of talking about off the recording, that they promised things to come a lot sooner than what they did before.
Don't believe in their lies.
Don't believe in their lies. Don't believe in Uncle's lies. So that's unfortunate the way things have been, but we got some good news out of Square Enix just yesterday, apparently to the Nikkei Trendy. They had an interview.
Dude. Just say Nikkei.
Nikkei, yes. Apparently they had an interview. Who was the guy who was at the...
Matsuda?
Yeah, Matsuda. They had an interview with Matsuda.
The most incompetent CEO the Square Enix
ever
had.
Yes.
Where's
apparently...
God damn it. Okay, no.
He's gone. It's fine. No, Iwata's not gone, but...
Wada.
Wada.
You said Iwata.
I said Wada.
You can just blend them together.
Not Iwata. Wada.
No, I said Wada.
Okay.
Stop putting words in my mouth.
It's fine. Wada was a nice guy.
He was Imperial Hot.
Yes.
Oh, God, I'm dying.
That's an interesting laugh, Simon.
Oh, God.
So he's basically said something that basically everyone's been pulling apart this past 24 hours. How that they realized with Bravely Default that fans love the heavier, quote unquote heavier JRPGs, which was like, oh, what? Then and so they want to go forward. They want to make games for the core gamer and for they want to make Japanese games, Japanese RPGs for the Japanese audience, which is something like, apparently all these other companies have already figured out a long time ago. Square Enix just now coming around saying, oh, you guys like that? You don't like us stereotyping? Then I guess we should go this way. So
I love how it took them for a game that they did not localize. They had the opportunity of localizing in the West for them to realize, oh shit, we should go back to our roots.
This game is the number 8 selling title.
You think they'll localize Bravely Second?
Yeah, sure, of course.
I think it's kind of funny. I mean, first of all, a lot of that interview I felt kind of like fluff, PR speak. Like, we're going to it's like, obviously paraphrasing here, it's like, oh, we're going to do things differently and be better now. Like, okay, now that's one thing to say it, now do it. But also, the thing that I took away from most of the article that Zach mentioned already is that it seems like they were trying to be too regional at first. Like, okay, there's the Japanese audience in Japan, and then there's the American audience in America. But I think what they were saying is they realized that there are JRPG fans not only in Japan but in America. And I think it's kind of ironic how they didn't even bring over Bravely Default on their own. They had Nintendo help them there.
But this was what it was like. I think Nintendo helped them. I think Nintendo was like, "You're not going to localize this. Can we do this, please?" Okay, take it.
Yeah, help.
This is the kind of thing that happens a lot. Like I remember Shane Bettenhausen talking about way back when he was trying to localize some of these other games, and Vic Ireland when I interviewed him at E3 a couple years ago, he was talking about how it takes a lot of effort to convince someone in Japan to bring their game over. It seemed really odd that Square Enix was one of those kind of groups, but it's so weird. And now, like, news coming out, like, yesterday, how Capcom had to split. I think apparently, like, they had to cut their forecast in half because their mobile business wasn't doing so well.
Shit.
Yeah, so it's like, now Breath of Fire 6 is coming out soon. It's like, guys, come on. Let's get this together. Let's think about this for a moment. We do understand that mobile gaming is huge in Japan. Apparently, it takes up, like, half of the industry in Japan is mobile. So
well, the problem, there's like two things to take away from this. First of all, going back to the idea of like who's going to localize Bravely second. So I think this is going to be like the same situation as like Demon Souls and Dark Souls was. Like people expected Atlas to publish Dark Souls because I mean Namco wasn't going to freaking bring over Demon Souls. So I think the same thing will happen. I think Square Enix is going to take back the rights to localize Bravely second. I mean they own the rights anyway, so whatever, fuck it, why not?
They'll do it. Yeah, they'll do it.
So like that'll be the biggest thing. Going back though, like the problem is like all these like Japanese game developers, they pump so much like money. I'm gonna just say R&D just for the fuck of it. Why not? They put so much R&D into like developing these games, and like only one out of like I'm exaggerating 30 games they develop come out. I'm like, what the fuck? Like why? Why would you do this? Like it's such a
business.
It is business. But like that's not how every market sort of like you don't see that from a single developer. You see that from multiple sources. So like a bunch of game developers putting out a single game and then one of them becomes a success while the others become not as much of a success. One developer is creating multiple games expecting like to hit like that golden bullet or whatever, silver bullet or whatever bullshit. Like it makes no sense for like a single company to flood the market and sort of like saturate it with their own shit and then expecting it to succeed.
It's kind of funny because it's kind of like if you take a look at, for example, the handheld market. Here, the regular like 3DS and Vita, you don't really see Western developers that interested in developing. I should say indie developers are definitely focused on that stuff because it's easy for them to port now. But like some of the bigger developers, they're not interested really in developing for those handhelds, but you see tons of people in Japan doing it, and then you have companies localizing that stuff. So it's like totally different. Do you guys think it's kind of like a region thing where they have different idea of what platform to focus on their time and efforts on?
Maybe.
I don't know. Like I feel like okay, so I think it's like the same situation as the mobile situation in Japan is the same situation that the console market had a couple years back. Everyone wanted to hit that fucking Call of Duty stats. Like, we all need to make shooters. We all need to get, like, freaking awesome revenue, like, Call of Duty.
That's what they want Final Fantasy to be. They want to be the next Call... Was it Final Fantasy that they said they want to make the next Call of Duty? Like, try to sell as well or something like that?
I don't know. But, like, the point is, like, they were all trying to aim for something that was, like, outside of their area of expertise. Like... and then try to succeed at it. And I'm like, why are you, like, your fans are so invested in, like, stuff like, so let's say Square Enix, your fans were so invested in, like, high-quality JRPGs. Like, why are you focusing so much on like, a market that is super fickle? Like, that's also one of the problems, is, like, the mobile market is extremely fickle. Like,
I remember him bringing up in that interview, talking about how the problem with Hitman Absolution, the most recent one, is that they try to make it mass market instead of appealing to those who are big fans of the stealth genre, thus alienating their only.
I don't think that's true.
But I think it's something to consider that by trying to create a game that's more mass market friendly, they're of course forgetting those. Like they're not focusing in on the specifics that made that series so popular to begin with.
Sure,
I mean,
I guess that's one way to say it. The way I'm reading it is that, hey, we didn't understand our audience, so we made a bad game. But they're trying to put the blame on the fans. They're like, oh, well, the market that we were trying to appeal for didn't like it. And I'm like, well, fuck you.
I don't know. The problem that I have, though, is that if their idea of not making it mass market is that they instead want to make games like heavier JRPGs, it's like, no, I don't need you to make it super traditional and super old school and things like that. Like making a mockery of it and just say, oh, like you really get me. It's more that, hey, why don't you make characters that I actually care about, than stories that I actually want to follow along with.
You mean you don't care about lightning? You don't care about lightning?
It wasn't so much lightning, and to be perfectly honest, it was that I could not follow Final Fantasy 13's story because they were creating new stories. All the language, everything about that story was hard to follow, and it's like, hey, read this book to understand the story. It's like what happened to the old times, with Chrono Trigger? I didn't need to read anything. The story pretty much put out in front of me what I needed to do, and I was good enough, even as a kid, to follow along and know what I had to do next. But in Final Fantasy 13, it just my head hurt. I mean, obviously, it's well, there's a narrow passageway. You just have to follow this narrow map, and you can get to where you need to go.
Yeah,
it was following the logic in my head, getting from point A to point B. I haven't been able to really get into it because I don't like the characters. I can't care about the story. And it's really odd that now they're talking about having Japanese games that appeal to Japanese people and then so forth. It's part of me is well, what does that mean for us? But also it's that Compile Heart, I remember a year or two ago, they announced their Galapagos RPG brand that they put out. It was that thing where, I don't know what, it's a collection of violence. But no, it's that they wanted to make very super niche, very super focused Japanese games, which I was like, well, they've been kind of doing that for a while, but I guess that's
they're not doing anything different.
Yeah, they've been obviously Neptunia and all their Mugen Souls and all those other games, Idea Factory and Compile Heart have been doing, because they are working together. They've been making games like that for a long time, so I just wonder what exactly this means, because they've been talking about doing this for a while. I remember when The World Ends With You came out, they said the exact same thing almost, that they wanted to get back to what made us great. And it's I don't know if you guys are really serious this time.
I don't know.
Adam was talking about it too. I remember Adam brought it up about how I'm waiting to find out.
Hey, about what?
About how you felt that they need to show something before you actually believe them.
Oh, that's what you're referring to. Oh.
Yeah.
They just said that we've learned our lesson and we know that people like JRPGs or something like that, and it's just okay, what does that mean?
Fucking obvious.
What in terms of actual things you're going to do now? What does that mean? I mean, what does it mean?
It's what part of the last 10 years haven't they gotten? It's I don't mean to express frustration because sometimes obviously they put out some good titles in the past several years that I've actually kind of enjoyed, but it's you think this is, to say it's long overdue is putting it lightly. What happened before, obviously with WADA going on, obviously you have a new CEO from last year, but where exactly were your heads at, and obviously you've got all these people upset. It's not to sound entitled or something like that, but it's yeah, no shit. What the fuck? Serious. It's just baffling that they would say something like that and hey, do you have any kind of self-awareness about this? Yeah, you think that the title's most revered, The World Ends With You. It was the first time Nomura actually put out something completely original in a while, and then that was big, and then, we'll shit all over it from now on. Let's put a mobile release out, and then, we'll leave it at that. So it's like, and then Kingdom Hearts started off promising, and then now it's just like they put out so many releases. I mean, obviously people still love those games, so I'm not going to say they're terrible or something. I'm just saying that back in the day, I hate to sound old, but like the best part about like the late 90s and 2000s was that they were putting out like every few months they put out like a brand new RPG kind of thing. Like, well, this game is too dark for Final Fantasy VII, so let's change it and make it Xenogears. It's like, what happened to those days? And then Dragon Guard 3 gets localized, and you're like, well, that's...
It was easier to develop it was easier to develop games back then than it is now. I mean...
It's also this, like, misunderstanding that I feel that they need to make this high quality, like they pushing the blame onto the consumer, saying like, well, there's the high demand of people who want high quality titles from us, that's why it's costing so much and we got 6 months. It's like, what the fuck do you think like handheld games are, you know? It's like they're not high budget, like they're the fraction of they still cost millions of dollars to make on a handheld, but it's like you got Shin Megami Tensei 4 coming out like on the handheld device. I'm not saying that we need the next Final Fantasy to be a handheld game, although that'd be interesting. I'm just saying that it's like, why does it always have to be this way? You know, why does it have to be like a big game that takes several years to develop? We have to hire like 400, 500 people to make this game that costs like $60 million. It's like, it doesn't have to be that way.
Square was always kind of like obsessed with pushing like the technology and stuff of anything, but now it's like they don't really know what's going on.
Final Fantasy VII, they used to say it was like their idea of what, because they were looking forward to the time when it could be, you know, a movie. You know, it's like it's this great graphics. You know, like they were waiting for the time when they weren't held back by the technology. They could make this beautiful orchestrated soundtrack and, you know, the graphics that blow people away. They said that 13 was kind of their thing, but I remember an interview with Katase, and he basically said how we did our best, we did some of the best work. He would like reminisce about how when they were making like Chrono Trigger and stuff like that, where they used to be hindered by their budget and by the technology, and so they had to focus on taking advantage of what they could at the time. It's like
limitations breed creativity.
Exactly, and that's. But it's not a good. Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
It's sad, I guess. It's in a way, but I can honestly say that I'm glad they're saying it. It's just that how long is it going to take before we find out if anything's going to come of it? You know, after
if they're just starting now, then that's a few years away before anything that they start now gets released.
Because all they have so far, like they have nothing for the rest of the year except for Kingdom Hearts 2.5, you know, and Murdered Souls,
which was supposed to be out, by the way, Q1 this year.
Yeah, but then they decided to make it for the next consoles, which I'm sure went into their budget once again because they had to develop it for the next consoles, which I don't really know why they would do that, but whatever. But there's that. But you know, it's kind of crazy. I hope they kind of pull out. But at this point in time, there's so many other game companies developing games that I care way more about. So it's like it's great. But then Namco's over here and Falcom's over here and all these other companies.
I think Namco's done a pretty good job, at least.
Yeah, they've
most part
haven't forgotten where they came from. At least I think that way. Even if Tales was not doing so well not too long ago. But
yeah, sure. A lot of games. Speaking of Namco, a particularly hyped up game came out it's April now, but like this past month.
What was that?
I don't know. It starts with the D and ends with Arc Souls 2. It's pretty good.
Need another hint.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's an extremely hard game.
My parents never taught me how to stream.
I almost broke a controller playing it, actually.
That doesn't surprise me.
You don't say.
Yeah, it's... granted, I almost broke my controller playing the first game, so... so the game I'm talking about is, obviously, if you didn't get it, it's Dark Souls 2. I think it was one of the most anticipated like RPGs, if not like the most anticipated RPG of this year. Like
for you?
Is that no? I think in general. I think the only thing the only thing that was like possibly competing against it was Witcher 3, but that got delayed, and people were like, "Well, fuck. I guess we gotta now look forward to Dark Souls 2 now."
February 14th or whatever it's gonna be. Yep.
Yeah. So like a lot of people had this like hype revolved around it. There was a lot more mainstream coverage for this game than previously, which is good. But towards the game's release, obviously there was some controversy in regards to how the game looked actually in game compared to how it was.
It was targeted.
Yeah, so the build before, the final build does not match up to what the builds were previously. There's some huge graphical discrepancy. The engine, the features that were touted in the engine initially are just not there. So obviously the dynamic lighting is not so dynamic anymore. Textures are completely flat, sort of.
Really?
Yeah, so graphically it does not look as good as the first game.
Really?
Or not the first game, sorry. The earlier builds of the game.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, I hope it's at least a step up.
That is actually the least of my issues of the game. My primary issue of the game was that it was a technical mess in that, the game was running 20 FPS, on the PS3, on the console, and I'm like 30 FPS. I'm it's all right. 30 FPS is pretty good because that's
that's
the standard. That's the console standard. That's pretty good. Obviously, people want 60 FPS. That the PC version is going to be hopefully not capped and it'll run at 60. But yeah, people were excited. I'm yeah, let's do this. And I'm well, shit, it doesn't run as good. There are some screen tearing on the 360 versions. The PS3 version has frame rate problems up the wazoo. And it's uncapped too, by the way. So sometimes it'll run at 30 FPS or 40, and other times it'll run at fucking
it just
God knows what. Yeah, it's terrible. But overall, the game design is still pretty good. It's Souls. It's hard. It's
how's the soundtrack? Is it still as good?
Yes, the soundtrack's a bit disappointing too. Man, I am just bashing this game. Okay, the game is good. I gave it an 8 for a reason because it still has that the combat is still great. What makes the Soul series great is still there. The enemy design is pretty good. The weapons are really fun to use. There's a lot of great magic spells. The lore is interesting. Granted, if it's it follows the same narrative style as Dark Souls 1. But yeah, the soundtrack is it's not as great. There's not as memorable tunes, and it's not as diverse. It's just there's a lot of drum pounding. There's a lot of songs with drum pounding. I'm what the fuck? Why does every song sound the same almost? And I don't want to bash the composer for it. It just wasn't that great of a job. Not only that, but the bosses, the first 4 bosses play the exact same, and I'm what the shit?
Oh.
I'm
really?
Yeah, it's terrible. The first 4 bosses are extremely terribly designed. I'm who designed this shit?
Is it because they're very straightforward, or is there any particular reason for that?
Yeah, they're straightforward. They all do the stupid same slash, really wide slash that you can read. You can see it coming from fucking Mount Everest if you're in trying to look at the Great Wall of China. Holy shit! It's so bad. It's terrible. At one point, I was drinking with my left hand, just clicking circle backstep because it was so fucking easy to dodge this shit. I'm is this real? Am I dodging this shit with one hand? It was terrible. But
I assume though it gets progressively more difficult because you say you break a control almost.
Yeah, so there were some I would say a lot of the times I'd say the regular mobs were a lot more difficult to fight than the actual bosses. There was one particular boss that I had a fucking hellishly horrible time with because I just wasn't prepared for it, and I won't spoil what the type of boss is, but it's called Lost Center, and it's the absolute worst boss I've ever played in a video game. It is the most, and it's not because the boss is particularly hard, but it's because the design is extremely gimmicky. It relies on one single trick to totally fuck you up.
Wow. Okay, so, but is it that they're more difficult and that they're cheap, or does it actually take more strategy? What part is difficult? Is it the one that's frustrating, or is it the one that's forgiving?
One that's frustrating. It's not rewarding, really, to overcome the challenges, and many of the challenges is in Dark Souls 2. So,
man, you're really selling me. It's because Dark Souls 1, I heard people were happy because it was rewarding.
Yeah, Dark Souls 1 is, my favorite game of, the generation, probably, right next to, Arc Rise Fantasia, but, yeah, people give a lot of shit for, the latter half of Dark Souls. I would say the latter half of Dark Souls 2 is much better than, the first half of Dark Souls, and, that
was kind of in Dark Souls 1 from people I talked to. Isn't that kind of it? The first half wasn't, it was kind of it, but then the second half of Dark Souls was, people got way more into it. I don't know.
I don't know, but, it's good. I mean, it is good. There's a lot of merit. You will love it for it being more Dark Souls. You will hate it that it doesn't really differentiate itself from Dark Souls 1, and that it sort of falls short on, like, many of the aspects that sort of, like the quality doesn't translate over well.
Simon.
Yeah.
I'm curious. I haven't played Dark Souls, so I'm speaking from ignorance, but I've seen a lot of it played. You talked a little bit about the combat and some of the encounters, but how about like the other parts of the gameplay, like world traversal, loot, economy, or how you sell things with your souls? And I'm speaking from ignorance, but how about those parts of the game compared to the first?
I would say I actually prefer the traversal much better because you're not spending around. You can warp from area to area, which is like really nice, and I enjoyed that about Demon Souls. I like that it's too varied. So Dark Souls 1, it was all one world. You couldn't warp from bonfire to bonfire until late game. Here you can do it from the get-go, and yeah, and it's really nice.
That's good. Yeah.
But the thing is, each area is much smaller and condensed. So it doesn't feel really intricate. There aren't many shortcuts. You're not discovering, oh, hey, this is a really cool...
You can't fall down from here and end up in some weird path.
Yeah, it doesn't work like that, which is a tad disappointing. It sort of sucks. But, like, at the same time, like, I think it's sort of nice that, like...
It's tighter, maybe? Like, it's better, more made?
Yeah, it gives you much more bite-sized experiences, and you're like, oh, this is really cool. I like it. Things of that effect. So, traversal, I would say... is both good and bad. Good because you get to go from wherever you want at any point in the game, but bad in that like the areas themselves aren't very like they're not cleverly designed, and that's partially because actually you can transport everywhere. Like, do you understand what I'm saying?
I understand that.
Yeah. So maybe they'll change that, and like if there's another Souls game, maybe they'll change that to have like bigger areas, or like they'll limit how you can sort of. I pondered the idea of like they should have had an item where you can warp from place to places. Like you
quick
need that
travel,
fast travel.
Yeah,
quick travel is always a tricky thing. You don't want to make it tedious so people have to revisit and re-explore areas over and over and over again. But I think you can go too far if you make it so easy to just click a button and go wherever you want. You have to.
Yeah, it would take away from its like all the work they put into the actual environment.
Yeah, you have to balance it somehow, whether it's by limiting by limiting how many or how often you can warp, or where you can warp to.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Just to the bonfires, maybe if you have to like warp back to bonfire or something, but then that you can just kill yourself and probably do the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean. So like Skyrim does, I think Skyrim actually does a good job in all honesty. Like Skyrim,
like Wind Waker, just have a map on a grid and you have to go to a specific spot on the grid.
I guess like the reason why I say is like you want to explore, so you're gonna explore every single area, and then like once you're done, like it's still like sort of magical to go from place to place. You're like, oh, I never encountered that before, but you still have the option of fast traveling. Like with Dark Souls, it's like I don't think each area you have to go through them, but once you go through it, like you don't really feel that urge to go through it again, because why the fuck would I go through it and fight enemies that were annoying as fuck to kill the first time and I got mobbed last time? Or
I guess only if there's like DLC maybe or something like that.
I guess, but like also the thing is, if you kill enemies in a zone a certain amount of times, they'll stop spawning. Which I mean,
really, I've only seen that. I thought that was only like kind of like the bosses that became enemies or something like that in Dark Souls 1 where that happened. But this is actually with regular spawns too?
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. Oh. So it's just like going through like a very quiet area now or something?
Yeah, I mean, I guess. It's just like they're saying, yeah, they just disappear after a while. They'll come back like after you like explore other zones, but like for the most part, it just dies.
Or like, do they come back if you like use humanity or something like that, or is that it?
Yeah, so like there's like you can use items to buff up enemies too, which is nice. Like that's another reason to like come back to an area because like certain bosses spawn or like parts become hotter, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
I actually kind of like that. This is maybe more of an MMORPG thing, but in an RPG that has like some sort of realized world like that, and it's not really like a linear story-driven RPG, it kind of feels ingenuine if you have like, oh, I did this area and I'm done with it, and I'm gonna go to the next area and be done with it, and like things you kind of go through once and never again, and like check it off a list. Like, I think it's better if it's like an area that, is just another area of the game with multiple reasons to be there or multiple things to do there. Sometimes maybe coming back to it to do certain things. Like in open world or more open games like Dark Souls, or at least what I understand of Dark Souls, I definitely appreciate that, I think.
Oh yeah, for sure.
It's because it's a living and breathing world. It's not like, and just cut it off, and just cut it off.
Yeah, rather than being like a place that you go through once and then you're done with it. Like it's like a thing that you only do once. Like that doesn't feel genuine as an actual place in this world. Like
doesn't feel organic at all.
Right.
Yeah.
It's, like actually just make it like a different, not just something that you like traverse through as like a path to get to the end. It's just another place you can visit for whatever you need to visit for. Like kind of like I actually kind of think about the Fallout games when I think about that. There's obviously there's like early game places and late game places, but like there's many things you can do in each at various points of the game, rather than like, you go through that place in the first hour and then you're done with it and you never touch it again.
It's obviously for the longevity of the game too. Like if you don't want to have to beat the game to go back there, it's like, well, I can always come back and play this area.
Pretty much.
Kind of like that. Oh.
Yeah.
So
that's Dark Souls in a nutshell. It's a great game. Pick it up if you enjoyed the first one, but don't.
Or if you're waiting for the PC release.
Yeah, I would say actually wait probably for the PC release if you have.
Hopefully, it's not as gimped as the original release.
Everything they've said so far is that they're fully aware of all the problems that happened with the original PC release.
The original game, I mean.
They plan on not making that happen.
It's not going to look like the earlier builds. It'll be a better. It'll run technically better than the 360 version and the PS3 versions. But don't expect the super dynamic lighting and stuff come back.
That's what the fans are for. They'll do that.
Yeah, that's what Durant will do. Thanks, Durant.
Yeah, Durant will do that for us.
Thanks. We appreciate what you do for us, Durant.
Rumor has it it's supposed to be April 25th, but time will tell. But it's likely to come out then.
I've always pronounced his name in my head Durante.
Durante. That's actually what I was thinking.
Yeah, it is Durante.
It is it? Oh, I just pronounced Durant.
But I was like, why would he put an E at the end? Of course, we're talking about the guy who fixed up Dark Souls 1's PC release by removing the stupid limit and the crazy, the 4:3 resolution that it had. It's such a bad release. But like I said, the developers seem like they're going to turn things around with this one, so we'll see. Apparently, wasn't Durante also the guy who fixed the Deadly Premonition PC release as well? That guy's always coming back to help.
That's how he got famous for it. Well, not famous in quotation marks, but yeah.
You get known by people outside of GAF, apparently.
Yeah.
So of course Dark Souls 2 came out. Let's see. Obviously, another big release, Final Fantasy X and X-2 HD.
Yep.
So I didn't play.
I don't know how you feel about those games.
Really don't like them, but how do you guys? You guys played it. Did all of you guys play it?
Yes, I
haven't beaten it yet, but
I haven't beaten it either.
Then yeah.
Yeah, I played both. I played both the games in the remaster. So.
Oh my gosh, are you serious?
I've completed one. I'm working on it. It's 10-2. So.
How about we talk then 10-2? Everyone talks about 10. Why don't you guys talk about 10-2?
Okay. Actually, I'll love to talk about 10-2. So. 10-2, I think, is probably, now I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyways, is a very underrated game. I think a lot of people kind of assume what it is and don't actually see some of the, the good things about it, which would be some of the mechanics in the battle system.
I do like the battle system in the game.
It probably is the best battle system in the franchise.
I like it a lot more than 10s. I like it a lot more than a lot of the Final Fantasy games, so I definitely agree. Okay, just kind of a general comment on a personal opinion. I've never been a big fan of ATB, which is the typical Final Fantasy battle system, where you basically, it's called turn-based, but you don't really take turns. You kind of wait for a gauge to fill, and then you can make an action. And depending on the action, you might have to wait longer for the next action, and enemies and the characters kind of all go whenever they can. So status effects and stuff like that could stop it.
Yeah. So I've never been a big fan of that, and it's hard for me to maybe articulate why exactly. I think it's because I feel like I'm waiting too often. So one thing that Final Fantasy 10.2 did is they kind of sped everything up, which I think is, it's a small thing, but I think it helped a lot. But not only that, but it's kind of got this Grandia-esque timing involved as well.
Yeah.
To a larger effect than other games where you can affect the enemy's attack timing by hitting them at certain times and certain skills and certain status ailments. So you can actually benefit your strategy by timing your attacks to hit a certain enemy at a certain time, which will delay their movement, and so on. So that's one part of it. But also, of course, the other big component of Final Fantasy X-2's battle system is its job system kind of overlaying it.
It's funny. It's the first time that they used that job system since, 5?
Yes.
Yeah, it's such a bummer.
It's a lot like Final Fantasy V. One way in which it's actually different is that you can only use skills from the jobs you are currently in. So that's actually one thing that is more restricting than Final Fantasy V, where you could have a sub-skill. However, the big difference is you can change in battle. And you can do it seamlessly too, if you turn off animations.
Yeah, turn that off. You'll be quick. Yeah.
And it's very quick. No animation at all. It's just seamless. So what this means, at least for me when I'm playing, is, and maybe in Final Fantasy V, which I played recently and I love it. Final Fantasy V, you might approach a battle by setting up a certain combination of classes and characters.
Yeah, it's a lot of pre-battle.
Yeah, exactly. You'd set that up, and then you'd approach the battle that way. With Final Fantasy X-2, you can do that still, of course. However, there's a little bit more of a reactionary component to it. It would be helpful for me to change this character into an alchemist or whatever, to use this ability for a couple of turns, and then to change her into something else. So you can kind of go on the fly, which is, a pretty significant difference. So it ends up, all this together kind of culminates in a fast, frantic, but not too frantic, system that's just kind of a blast to play and to react to every situation. And it ends up being just very, very fun.
Yeah. I very much appreciate 10.2 for what it is. I think a lot of people, and it's probably the case for most people, a lot of people give it flack for its narrative, premise.
Who knew that having a concert in the Thunder Plains was always such a great idea? It's why would you do this? I don't know. You had this big concert hall at the beginning of the game that you did this huge thing about, but then let's just do this at the Thunder Plains. I always thought that was the weirdest. But thunder's coming down.
Who cares?
I was going to die. It's just why would you do that?
Now, compared...
Push them into the elevator. It's just...
I hated that part.
I could never control it right. They kept moving to the side.
Wait, which part was this? I don't remember.
Yeah,
I haven't started 10.2 yet.
There's a little side game thing where you get the musicians and you can push them in the elevator. And it's
but they're static, so you have to push them.
It's the jankiest little thing ever.
Oh, God, I do remember that
and
now.
You can't lock on, so you're just running against them. Just
with a static camera so that you can't adjust. Anyways... the actual, if we're talking specifically narrative itself, as in the events that happen, I really don't think it's awful. There's some good idea.
Yeah, the concert, I'll give the concert flag, but the actual, the stuff they showed in the concert was actually pretty cool. The song itself was actually really good.
What I'm talking about is okay, so
all-girl
following the events of Fantasy X, there's two new factions that want to kind of change the world now in different manners. That's an interesting idea. That's
Kevin and what's it called? The
Youth League.
Yeah, Youth League, right?
And so they want to, they're a little bit butting heads there. And then some parts of the narrative kind of call back to some of the history of this game world Sphera, talking about the war between the two cities, which are Zanarkand and Vitale. And then they tie that into kind of this ghost apparition character this is where the narrative gets a little confusing, who is the character that Titus looks like, the main character, or Titus. I pronounce it Titus in my head still.
That's fine.
And, it's a little bit confusing, but I don't think that part is totally awful. The part that probably disappoints me most, again, if we're talking about narrative specifically, is that the conflict revolves around a super weapon. And super weapons are...
He's got a sweet organ that he plays on, though. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Super weapons, in my opinion, are the most boring conflict device you can come up with. This bad guy has a super weapon and we have to stop him.
It was cool in 7, but then they kind of overplayed it.
The part about the game that really is probably what gets the most flack is more the tone rather than the narrative.
Like that super J-pop, not J-pop, but like, like that super, girls pop group / I don't know, like, how to exactly say it.
For instance, like, one of the girls will say something, I don't even know how to say this, cool, and then like, or faux tough, I think is what my brother actually called it, faux tough, when he was watching. And then like the girls will kind of like hop around, giving each other high fives, like, yeah, we can do it, and it's just like,
yeah, we showed them.
Right.
Yeah. It's girl power or something like that, but yeah.
Yeah, so it's got like this poppy, like almost
it's like insulting women kind of almost kind of in a way. It's like, I don't think they're gonna like that. It's fine.
Like
it's fine.
I don't think some of the characterizations are totally without merit, but there's just a lot of this tonality there. It's just like, I could do without this.
That's true. It felt like very teenage.
They basically turned everyone into Riku.
Yeah.
Sounds about right.
Yuna did become Riku at that point. That's
I mean, they are cousins, but who cares?
Yeah. So, but otherwise, though, I mean, I don't. Considering the battle system itself is just like Simon said, might be the best in the entire series.
It's a great evolution of the job system, and you hope that if future games would use it, like if Tactics, for example, came out again, I don't know actually, would it be alright if you could change like jobs on the fly in the middle of battle or something like that? But it'd be interesting to see what they could do with that. I just wanted to come back, and I'm glad 10-2 did such a good job with it. If they were going to use it,
so
just shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I would say it's the other way of branching out. Bravely Default was like one way of branching out from like Final Fantasy V, like battle system, and like what's it called? How do I say it? I forgot.
ATV?
Yeah, like Bravely Default is one way of branching out from the FF5, and then FF10-2 is another way of branching out from FF5. Just two different routes, like same routes.
Yeah, it's
taking it inside the battle. Yeah,
it's just a nice take on the mechanics without being a total carbon copy. And, just kind of making it a little bit of its own thing. There's really no other job system like it. I mean...
Yeah, it sucks that they have to kind of focus to make it like let's pull it in Final Fantasy 11 and 14, which makes it great, but then it's like, it's of course you got to have jobs in those games, and they have the sub jobs and stuff like that, which is great. It's just that, I'd love for them to do it again in one of the single-player games for sure.
Yeah.
So maybe, but...
Are you guys? I'm just curious. Are you guys playing on the Vita or the PS3?
PS3.
Yeah, PS3.
Really? I guess I'm the only one who bought it for the Vita because I think it plays pretty spectacular. Are they actually? There's one thing I'm curious. Are there frame rate drops on the PS3 version?
Only in the first Final Fantasy X, there were some in summon animations. Like when you have Yuna summon an Aeon, there could be some, but that was typically
Shiva just destroys everything.
Really? Okay, because I run into a lot of frame rate problems in like the original.
There are. This has been, I think, commonly said for all versions, but the loading times are a little bit more significant than they were in the PS2 release, I think.
Okay.
I wonder why that is.
Also, I find it really annoying and obnoxious that you still cannot skip fucking cutscenes.
Yes. That seems like a big oversight.
Like, holy shit. Who fucking designed this shit?
It doesn't make... Because
I'm going to make new models. It's going to look 10 times better than the original.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
You can skip cutscenes in 10.2. You could do that in the original release. So that wasn't something they added, but you would think it wouldn't be that hard to add a cutscene skip. I mean, they spent all this time changing the faces... which some for better or worse, depending on who you ask.
Yeah, recreate the models.
Yeah, they recreated the models. They even changed the soundtrack. Again, some of the tracks I do like better, but, whenever you're going to change a well-liked soundtrack, you're going to be met with resistance.
If 10-2, if they did let you skip cutscenes, then I can understand, but the fact that they put it in there shows that it's not an issue of like, well, we put all this work into this game, we don't want you skipping it. It's like, well, you kind of did that already in the first one.
Well, it's like, I mean, like they did put a lot of work into the remaster, so it's not like this. It's not like this is just a cheap, a totally cheap, cash in. Like they put all this work into it. You would think they could do a cutscene skip, and I mean, that's just kind of modern game design. You should be able to skip cutscenes.
Especially if you've played it as many times. I'm sure you guys have already done it. So
right, it's just.
I would not want to go sitting through some of those longer cutscenes again.
Especially when some of the tougher bosses in the game have, a longish cutscene in front of them. So if you have to try it again,
like what's it called?
Watch it again.
So, spoiler alert. That first Seymour fight, when you fight against Seymour in, what is it called? The Temple of Shit. I forgot what the Temple is called.
Vitale?
Yeah.
Temple of Shit.
That's
a totally different game.
Like, there's a long cutscene where, there's a long part where you have to go into the room, figure out, Seymour killed his fucking dad or whatever shit, and then you walk into the temple. And for the longest time, I didn't realize there was a fucking save point after you pass that cutscene in the, atrium, in the atrium after the first atrium for whatever crap. Yeah. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, holy shit, I can't believe that I have to go through this 5 minutes worth of cutscene again and again and again and again just because,
that battle was cheap. I remember that battle being cheap, so I can understand where you're coming from on that, yeah. Kind of a pain.
I don't know,
You had to beat his friends and then beat him? That was, yeah.
It was just a long fight, and I'm like, fuck this. This is so dumb. Because I remember, I forgot how to beat this guy. I'm like, how the fuck do I beat this guy again? So I did that fight 3 times, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is how you do it, which is a lot longer than how it normally takes. But yeah, fuck them not putting skip cutscenes. Fuck them. That was my...
That's your effigy on that?
That's my effigy on that. Otherwise a great bundle. It made me realize that every single HD remaster needs to be on the fucking Vita. I want to play some Sony on the Vita.
Yeah, and I haven't played the Vita version, but I do play a lot of things on Vita. Oh, yeah. I'm actually playing Wild Arms on the Vita right now, the PSP version. But,
that game, I love that soundtrack.
Yeah,
so good.
But anyways, this isn't a remaster change, but it's a international edition change that I think actually improved the game. Is in Final Fantasy X, the original, is the expert sphere grid.
Yes.
One part about the original Final Fantasy X is that for most of the game, your characters are on these paths on the sphere grid. Now, they aren't as one directional as Final Fantasy XIII's Crystarium, but they're not totally far from it.
Yeah, it's still pretty linear and
you can't really get lost or anything. You can't really experiment. But with the expert sphere grid, you pretty much can take any character.
Which is really nice.
You can pretty much take any character and take them however you want. They kind of start in a certain position, and their original paths are still kind of there, but there's a lot more branching paths. So, in original Final Fantasy X, Yuna is pretty much stuck with healing and summoning for a long portion of the game.
Oh yeah.
Until you get holy. But now, if you wanted to, you could have her learn some of the basic. You can have her learn some of the basic black magic skills, and of course she's efficient at them because there's only one magic set. So, and that's just one example. You can kind of build characters a little bit more freedom there, and I think it helps a lot.
Oh yeah, for sure. I think that's one of the issues. People, a lot of people give praise to the sphere grid system in comparison to oh, it's so expansive and how you customize it. No, fuck you, dude. It's the same thing as the Crystarium system. Stop. Or not really, but it's in the same concept as the Crystarium system. I would compare that Exilia's Lilium Orb is gives you much more freedom than what's it called?
Standard sphere grid. No.
Yeah.
I guess personally, where I'm coming from on that kind of stuff is that I'm not a fan of Crystarium or the sphere grid at all. It's I don't want to have to jump in and do this stuff, especially because with the Crystarium, it's completely linear. So it's this illusion of control that you have over your. No, not really. You're not going to make them. You're not going to make Lightning something other than what she's already at. You don't want to move them to a different class because they're not going to be that great at it. I'm not going to make them all these different things.
I'm not going to make Hope into a fucking Sentinel. Why the fuck would I do that?
It's not. Why would you do that? You'll keep them the same way they are. You'll max them out, and then they're well, I'm good. It's I'm not going to mess with that. So I had no real intention, and that's kind of what I get from the expert sphere grid too. Is it's trying to provide that. I'm not going to understand the basic black magic, but of course eventually you're going to shoehorn them into making her a white mage or anything like that. It's for me. It's I just appreciate just completely hands off Mass Effect or anything like that. I go the auto route because I was I don't really care. I mean, I could go in there and mess with it if I want to, but I'm good.
Yeah,
Like,
I understand your viewpoint. Like, you know, sometimes it's just nice to have the characters kind of have a more set role, you know, that you don't need to worry about.
It's because if I mess with it, it's like I'm going to be I'm going to mess up on it, or that it's like, well, they're pretending like I'm actually making a difference, and then just don't.
And it ends up just being a waste of time, or like.
Yeah, it's like, oh, now I want to re-roll everything because I apparently screwed up like all this set time ago. So it can be frustrating, but I can understand like with the expert sphere grid how that seems obviously far better than the original, just because it's not shoring you in, but at the same
even
time,
on your first time it's better. I would say even on your first time it's much better.
First, people first going into well, it depends, but I can see the appeal. Personally speaking, though, it's that if I was playing it, I would eventually just still stick with what they're good at, and I probably wouldn't move too far away, like deviate from that either.
Yeah.
Well, like for example, it's nice. Like in the original game, you don't get what's your name, Riku, until later in the game to use like stealing abilities. Although you can have in the original game, you have Kamari, who is kind of allowed to go anywhere. So one thing that people sometimes like to do is to have him learn stealing abilities, so you have it earlier. But that's just one example. You can have anybody learn any skill relatively early, so it's just nice that you can kind of mix things up. So it's just a little bit of that freedom that I think I appreciate. But I can.
It's nice to have like a healing ability early, so you don't have to waste all your items or something. But yeah.
So this is my fourth time playing through FF10. Did you guys ever find Riku ever useful? Like I think every single playthrough.
She stayed in the back all the time for me.
Her mix ability for her overdrive, I think, is really awesome. However, you need to get her overdrive bar up to do it, and that's it makes it.
Hey.
It's not too what's the word I'm looking for? Accessible.
Yeah.
So it's a really cool overdrive ability, mixing these items, and you can get like some really kind of broken combinations, like a mighty guard way before you can learn it, or having everything do 999 damage.
Yeah.
But it's just that it's not a totally accessible thing, so it's not like you need it, so you can kind of ignore it if you want. But
and you can eventually work your other characters up to be replacements anyway. So
I mean, you can use it with some post game stuff though, which is always nice.
The other bosses, yeah. Want to fight you and Leska? But yeah, for me, Riku was usually in the back though. I didn't use it too much myself.
I primarily use Auron Kamari.
Kamari.
I want to mention one thing about Final Fantasy X. And this isn't really a Final Fantasy X criticism, because this is actually true for most of the mainline series. I think random encounters in general are just too simple. So you really don't have much reason to experiment or try different things or use different characters. Yeah. You can kind of just find like a very simple strategy, like an attacker and a healer and a black mage, and pretty much go through the game that way.
It's because all the enemies are like meat shields. That's what they are.
Also with Final Fantasy X, and this is a big criticism of it, there's a lot of enemies that are just easily wiped out with a certain character, that rock, paper, scissors aspect of it.
They're all themed, and that's one thing I wasn't too fond of.
So like you have the flying guys, you have the fast ones, you have the armored ones, so it's just pretty easy to go through the battles. Now there are some enemies that buck that. There are some enemies that buck that trend, like the Chimera enemies or the Malboro enemies or the Monolith enemies, but there are not all too many of them. However, one place where I think Final Fantasy X does shine more is in boss battles. There's, in my opinion, actually several good ones nearing the end of the game with Seymour, Unalesca, there's the Spectral Keeper, and then in the post-game with the Arena. And this is where actually I like the battle system, I think, shines as well. Because it's purely turn-based, it's a little bit more methodical, I think, where you can, take an action and then you can maybe sit there for a moment, just think about, okay, I need to do this and this and this, maybe healing, maybe a status or a buff.
And then you have that bar to manage, where you're going to end up.
When is the enemy gonna move? And who? Maybe I can switch someone in to do something, or summon an Aeon. As a common strategy is to summon an Aeon before the enemy attacks as a kind of as a
Shield.
sacrifice.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's actually one thing I really did like about Final Fantasy X's battle system is because it's purely turn-based and not ATB, you can slow down if you want and kind of it almost becomes more of a strategy game that way. However, that doesn't really help in the main game ever because it's just too darn simple. But I do like it in the boss battles. So that was my comment.
So, yeah, David, what did you happen to play this past month, though? I mean, we talked about Final Fantasy X, we talked about Dark Souls 2. What did you end up playing this month besides Final Fantasy X?
I played South Park: The Stick of Truth. So
how was that? I actually played about 6-7 hours of that game, which is probably about half, is what they're saying. But how did you think of it?
I loved it. I thought it started out a little bit slow, but then it got really good.
How could it be slow? The first person you meet is Butters. Come on.
Okay,
the best guy.
You're right. I think it's pretty hilarious the whole way through, but like the final few hours are just nonstop, like jaw on the floor awesomeness, and also jaw on the floor, like holy shit, they really did that. Because I mean, South Park fans know that they kind of strive to be offensive, so.
You mean
they got pretty offensive by the end.
It was great because like I've kind of watched South Park off and on like a number of years. So far, like in the time I played it, it was great how many one-off jokes there were, like jokes that they never showed them again. But
there's a lot of callbacks.
Yeah,
like
this is callbacks
that
to South Park,
have appeared once or not since season 1.
Yeah,
or like, and pretty much every single song in the series is now used as like background music in random stores and stuff. And there's a callback to pretty much everything that's ever happened in the series. You can just go into people's closets and see like all the stuff, like Awesemo in Cartman's closet, or
they like you can find other things like chef songs are playing, but then like you have like fake Elton John scene in the tune in the background. And they got all the quests are callbacks to like all these going back, and you could go around collecting Chun Pokemon. Yeah. And every time they came back around, and like you heard the demo, and it's like that game was so much. I only played so much of it because all these other games came out, but I had a lot of fun with it from the time. I played it.
It's great. The gameplay I think isn't really that awesome. I mean, like I do think the battle system is serviceable, but it's kind of basic and not really very well balanced.
It reminds me a lot about like Mario and Luigi, it's timing based.
It's like supposed to be Paper Mario-ish, but it's first of all, it's way too easy.
That's true.
And like, there's only one.
Are there at least difficulties?
No.
Was there? I don't think so.
There are, but even on the hardest, there was only one fight that gave me any trouble, and that was Al Gore. So.
From what I've played it, Al Gore, you did, and Man Bear Pig also makes an appearance. But that game is very easy. Yeah, for sure.
But you know what? I'm perfectly fine with that because I kind of look at it as an interactive season of South Park more than like a game.
It was great because it's fake fantasy. So you're going around these worlds trying to fight these different boys, but then you're fighting homeless people because the mayor in town wants you to kind of get rid of them because they're making the town look bad. So you go around fighting all these homeless people, and they're just trying to defend their territory. And it's just a bunch of boys dressed up we'll go around these. When you fight this boy, he's got like this bucket on his head and like a old like cape, like raggedy blanket around him. And then when they're in battle, it becomes like a superhero. And when they get out of battle, it's like, well, they're back to being like this dumb little kid.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, it does get less, like, fake in terms of...
Oh, it does grow, yeah.
Well, how long did... Oh, I guess you didn't get to... never mind, I'm not going to say...
I've heard... I haven't played past... Like, it's a little bit past the halfway point, but I've heard how that game gets.
Well,
so.
Oh, okay. Well, the halfway point would still be when it gets less fake in terms of fighting.
I'm just meaning as, like, start as the beginning of the game, but sure, that's... I just like how...
Are you done with the first day? Let me ask you that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm done.
Okay, so, all right. But, yeah, it's... don't know where I was going with that. But, yeah, basically, it gets less fake.
I think they did a great job. Obsidian did a great job.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
It's an amazing how how pretty much seamless it is with how South Park normally works. Like, you go from cutscenes that look exactly like they're from the show to playing it, and there's not even, like, you can't even tell that there's any difference.
I mean, I played the PS3 version, first of all, so there were some technical problems, but...
Okay.
I played the PC version. There was none of that. I've heard that that's pretty much the PS3 version is one that's got hit by technical issues, but Alex, who reviewed the game for the site, also said the same thing. He played the different versions, and he also came away saying that if you want to play it, play the PC version. I had a kind of a crappy computer a couple weeks ago when I started playing, and it ran just fine. So if you have a choice, get that one. But it's great for even people who aren't big South Park fans because it's generally funny, like genuinely funny to play and to enjoy. So it's a lot of games fail miserably at doing comedy. Like they try to be funny and they end up just completely blowing it. But I felt like this one it just felt fun and enjoyable and very funny.
I think I'd probably call it the best licensed game of all time.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to think about all the different ones that could be. I'd say,
the only licensed games that like licensed games used to be good back when like Capcom
I don't know.
them.
Star Wars has got some pretty good games, but
okay, I guess Star Wars did, but even then, I don't know.
Even Rogue Squadron always better.
Well,
but
I guess there's like Batman games and stuff.
Lego, but it's as far as like RPGs go.
Oh yeah.
You can obviously put it Knights of the Old Republic, but I would say this is
game.
Yeah, I would say as far definitely
better than
one of the best. I would say so.
4-1.
People make jab at it that it's only 12 hours long, but it's really that it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's not full of fluff because it's like it has to be 20 hours or more if it's an RPG. It's like a lot of some of the best RPGs for less than 20 hours. Like Chrono Trigger, you can beat like in 18 hours.
I was perfectly satisfied with the length.
It's great. Me too. I so far I felt like what I've played so far. I feel like it's been nonstop fun. So
yeah, it's a pretty great game. And once you get to a certain place, you're gonna love it. Cause
how long would you say the game is roughly?
12 to 15 hours or something.
15 hours. Okay.
That's what they've been saying. Yeah. But it's. I think we need more. I'm okay with games like that. It's like it doesn't need to be 40, 50 hours.
It's fine. I'm fine with both.
I think that's the problem. Like Persona 4, I love, but like 20, I could do without like half of that game. I could go.
Really?
Without.
I thought like it was good, perfectly good for like playing chunks at a time. So I perfectly enjoyed it.
I was fine with the length of Persona 4 as well.
Yeah, a lot of Persona 4's game time is more dialogue than anything.
Yeah, probably.
All the social link and stuff like
but
that.
I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying, there's a lot of it it's very, I assume, very visual novel-esque. I've never played a visual novel, but you're reading or listening to they're not really cutscenes.
It's an RPG.
But, right. Well, I mean, even more so than most. I mean, I'm not saying there's no gameplay. It's just there's a lot of dialogue. That's basically what I'm saying.
I felt like there was a lot. I thought there was a lot of fluff in that game, but I'm not saying it was like bad because of it. I'm just saying like it's just to give an example of like this game's like 60, 70 hours long, but it's like
the first like what is it called? The first I would say 2 hours are just pure dialogue, right? Like is 2 hours exaggerating?
No, because they got the mist, the tutorial, and then you got like the first days at school, and then trying to find out the mystery behind the school. Yeah, that was definitely fluff. Yeah, that was definitely
long. Like it was hellishly long. Like
it was worse than Kingdom Hearts 2's.
They're both pretty.
Call back. People used to make fun of that all the time, but
speaking of Persona 4, it showed up in an ESRB rating for a PlayStation 3 release.
It's crazy how long it took for that game to be put on PSN.
Would you guys really want a PlayStation 4 release, Persona 4 instead of a Persona 3? Like, in all honesty.
I would still just play the Vita version. I would not touch that stuff necessarily anymore.
I would want Persona 3 like remastered.
Persona 4 Golden remastered, maybe.
And I think it would fit along perfectly, considering Persona 3 is airing in theaters as like a series of movies. So like
Persona 3 portable HD version.
Yeah, I can't play like okay. So actually, I've been meaning to ask. So you said you're playing Wild Arms on your Vita right now, right? Right. Adam?
Wild Arms XF, which is the SRPG. It's different from the rest of the Wild Arms games.
Right.
Yeah,
right. So that it was originally for the PSP though, right?
Right, it's a PSP game, but
Right.
digital version.
How is the resolution on that? Because I'm actually curious.
It's I don't know if it upscales it somehow, but it's pretty obvious when it's not a Vita game and it's a PSP game.
Because I can't play Tactics because of how bad its resolution is. Is it as bad as that?
I think it looks great. I think the sprites look great actually in Wild Arms. Some of the like the cutscene part of it, it's typical, like you have like a 2D art with text box.
Right.
That part you can tell it's not the best resolution there, but I think the sprites actually look fine. And I kind of like how they're not like super clean or super smooth sprites. They're actually you can like they have a little bit more of that. When I showed them to my brother who was watching me play, he's like, "Wow, they kind of look like good GBA sprites." Like, yeah, that's kind of that's kind of a good way to put it. He meant that.
I love GBA sprites. So.
Like it would, some like with the recent Final Fantasy like mobile releases, like those sprites, they're high resolution, but a lot of them have like this weird like filter or smoothing.
Yeah,
and they don't look like that, which is good in my book.
Yeah, that's good.
So, anyways, Wild Arms. I think it's definitely not as high resolution as Persona 4 Golden or anything in terms of like the UI and whatnot, but I still think it looks really good.
It's good.
I'm not very far into the game, but it seems to be a decently enjoyable SRPG.
Now, I don't like. I'm the outlier. I do not enjoy War of the Lions. Is it more like War of the Lions? Is it sort of like this guy? Like, what is XF like?
Wait, what? First of all, why don't you like War of the Lions? I mean, like,
I just don't.
I've had terrible frame rate issues. I have never been able to play War of the Lions myself, and I love Tactics. Is my favorite Final Fantasy game. So
I just don't enjoy it. I don't think it's a very fun game. It's much too slow for my taste.
Do you mean Final Fantasy Tactics in general, or something specifically about War of the Lions?
Something specifically about War of the Lions, because I enjoyed Advance.
Cutscenes?
I don't know, but something about War of the Lions.
Wait, you said Advance? You said Final Fantasy Tactics Advance you like, but not...
I enjoyed it more than I did War of the Lions.
So you're talking about the original Tactics you're not a fan of, but the advanced versions you are. Is that it? Because War of the Lions, the only difference is like the cutscenes.
There's a couple of new characters.
Well, there's dialogue differences too.
They got Final Fantasy.
War of the Lions has a new translation.
And I actually didn't like the new translation that much.
It's not a new translation. It's the original what it was meant to be like. That the people originally westernized it to make it sound American.
Tis your faith that wronged you, not I. Rather than blame yourself or God.
I like blame yourself or God better.
I like the new one a lot more, actually, personally, just because it feels. I keep going back to this word "genuine," but I like it a lot more.
I love Alexander O. Smith translations. But anyways, we kind of got a little bit off topic, I guess.
Yeah.
But I'm currently playing Wild Arms XF kind of while I play the Final Fantasy remasters. It's a little bit basic so far. There's only 5 classes besides some like unique classes for like the main character. So I don't know if you get more, but right now just with 5 classes, there's like there's like the physical class, there's only 1. The magic class, there's only 1. Then there's like the item user class, and then there's like the stat increaser class, and that's is there another one? I think that's actually it. There's only 4 standard classes, so it kind of feels a little bit bare bones in that regard. So I hope there's more that I unlock. But right now it's like I wish this was a little bit more complex, but I'm still pretty early. So, but it's the first Wild Arms game with the job system, so the only Wild Arms game with the job system.
Is it more like? So I'm still like having a hard. Is it like Fire Emblem-y, or is it more like Disgaea-y? Like
no, it's actually most like probably Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, I guess.
Okay.
Most like that. So you have a job system. It kind of looks like it. Instead of a square grid. You have it's a hexagonal grid, which is actually kind of similar to Wild Arms 4 and 5.
Okay.
So that means instead of having a character and being able to attack them from 4 different places that are adjacent to him, there's actually 6 different places adjacent to him.
Okay.
So it's got that type of grid, but it's otherwise it plays a lot like Final Fantasy Tactics Advance, except there's no like laws or anything, and it doesn't. Your facing doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter if you're...
So you can't get hit by behind or something.
Yeah.
Like that.
That's really basic.
Yeah, it's pretty basic. But unlike... I'm trying to remember tactics now. It does have, your main job, and then you can equip skills from any other job if you've learned them. Okay. So that seems to be a little different. So, like, if you can have your skills from your main job, and then if you've learned skills from other jobs, you can equip them, and you're not limited to how many... I mean, you are limited in skills, but unlike, some job systems where you have your main job and a sub job, you have your main job, and then any other skills that you've learned, you can equip them as long as you have enough slots for it.
Right.
So,
okay. All right.
So that's a little bit different, I guess. But I'm still pretty early, so I'm not expecting it to be super, complex or deep at this point. But if it doesn't get any more so, then I might be disappointed.
Okay. How old is this game? Do you know when it came out?
2008.
2008.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's not that.
Not
That's
that
the last
old.
Wild Arms game.
Yeah.
They haven't made a new one since then. So.
Zeboyd Games, the creators of
Cosmic Star Heroine,
and they're making Cosmic Star Heroine. Their April Fool's joke this year was that they are making Untamed Armaments, which is like a spoof of Wild Arms. So yeah,
playing with our emotions like this. He's been talking, like, obviously he's a big Phantasy Star fan too, so it's like he's always like, maybe if I bought the rights to Wild Arms, they would let me make a new one. So he's been talking about it for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you were talking about Wild Arms. I played Valkyria Chronicles 3, so that's a PSP game by Vita, and I thought it looks really good too. So I understand where you're coming from.
Is it better than 2?
Valkyria Chronicles. I never played 2. I played 1 and 3,
okay.
so I haven't played 2 yet.
Zach, before you get started, I have a question because this is.
I'm not really getting started. I was just going to comment on that. But yeah.
Okay. Well, in Valkyria Chronicles 2, in order to change class, you have to get a certificate to change class. Now, how do you get the certificate? It's totally random, and that pissed me off. So
I don't.
if you wanted to change a class. Or to upgrade a class, you had to get a certificate as like
you don't
a
need
random.
to do that in 3.
No, in 3, it's really like either a new
10 times better about this game.
Yeah, it's either that, of course, they introduce a new character that's like that class, or that you buy a weapon that unlocks that class. Like, do you want like the machine gun or whatever? Like, you just have to buy that weapon, and you could go ahead and go to the guy who trains you, and then change their class to that, and that's fine. I didn't do that too much where I was changing classes, just because if I tried it, I always felt like, well, I'm losing a lot of stats if I do it this way. I only did it a couple times where I changed one person to from a scout to a sniper, just because it was like I have way too many of these guys. I need to make new ones. So I didn't. It definitely does not. You don't need certificates or anything like that. No.
That makes me happy.
Yeah, and playing. I'm not going to talk too much about Valkyria Chronicles 3. I beat it in February, but when I first started playing that game, I was kind of turned off by the fact that in 1 you could pretty much choose whatever you want as your army, like your little squad there. Like you would go in, it'd be kind of randomized, and you can choose the people that you want on your squad. In this game, they come into the story like they just kind of either they're already there, like you have your like 8 or 9 people, I forget. But then over the course of the story, they just get introduced and kind of added into your story.
Right.
It wasn't until I thought about it later that I was like, no, this actually lets them tell a much more tighter knit story. It's a lot more linear, and that helps because they can make you care more about these characters because they're there, they're already woven into the story. They don't have to kind of play around with like, well, maybe they have this guy on their team, maybe they don't. So it's kind of hard to make you care about them because the developers themselves don't know who you chose.
That actually kind of reminds me of some of the earlier, not by earlier, I mean like some of the Game Boy Advance Fire Emblem games,
Yeah.
where like the story is kind of like always about the 3 Lord or main characters, and then you have all these other characters that never show up because, you know, for as much as the story knows, they're dead. So
that's the thing. It's like it's also what I get from like the strategy games, like the Sky. It's like some of my favorite characters in strategy RPGs or tactical RPGs are the ones that either you made or that you kind of got later on, and you're like, oh, I'm doing really good with this guy, so I'm like putting all my focus on this person, but they're not in any of the cutscenes or anything like that. So it's like, oh man, I wish they were. It's pretty much kind of like the problem with some of those types of games is like the story sometimes can fall apart.
Okay, another question to kind of follow that up.
Yeah.
In the actual gameplay, can a kind of a recruited character be just as effective as any other character?
Oh, definitely. I've had some of my best. They're not necessarily recruited. I guess the story adds them in. But the character I told you that I changed from a scout to a sniper, she was pretty much one-shot in everything. Like, she had some of the best accuracy because I built her up kind of like that. Just like giving her the weapons that you would find off of the special enemies that you fought around I forget what they're called. You probably know the term for them. But the ones that you would find that are specially named characters that you would kill and then get their weapons off of them.
Aces.
And so,
Aces.
Yeah, aces. Yeah, that was it. So like that one person was highly effective. Like even like towards the end of the game where the battles got really tough, like I was beating them out and they were just clearing house. And so it's kind of like the other Valkyria Chronicles games. It's how you equip them. You can make them even more effective than the main characters. Although obviously in this game, at least I'm blanking on if it's the case. The other ones, they keep a running tally of like the number of people you've killed and stuff like that. And so, like, you see, like, thousands and a bunch of mass murderers on my scroll, like, killing thousands of soldiers and stuff.
I think Valkyria Chronicles 2 did that, I think.
They did keep tallies, yeah. And then they ranked up on their own, so it's not like you would go in to the training guy and then, like, raise their defense and attack and evasion, but, or stuff like that. But then the only issue with that is that, so you can raise the defense against tanks or their attack against tanks, but the game would do it so that the enemies would also level up over the course of the game accordingly. So that way it's like if you put your evasion way too high, their evasion would pretty high as well, so it's always this back and forth. But the more people you killed in Valkyria Chronicles 3, your ranks would go up, you'd become a veteran and all that, and then it would basically incentivize you to change classes. The also thing about Valkyria Chronicles 3, which wasn't in the first one, was that there's sort of this love interest kind of thing where it's actually kind of a triangle, a little bit, not kind of, but
I can already tell I'm gonna hate this.
Well, the first game had a romance, which I actually think is one of the better romances in games.
Definitely.
It wasn't any crappy love triangle.
No, it's not quite a triangle.
There was in the anime. There was in the anime.
Yeah, it was in the anime. God. But it's not like that here. There's no conflict between them. Like, there's no, like, triangle in that they hate each other because they're getting, the main guy is getting between them. A few things is that all three characters, hell, the whole story is extremely well developed. Even if this was a fan translation I was playing, all the characters were developed so damn well in that game. And, the main character, he was so reliable, like, you could believe that he was the leader in the squad. And then you have Inca as the, kind of the, like her town got destroyed and stuff. It's all about this the stories themselves, but none of the cutscenes showed it where that was coming between them, the romance. It was mostly all the other stuff that was going on, like the war, of course, happening that got between them. It was never the romance itself. So the way it would happen is that in this game anyway, because it's on a portable. There was like this map, instead of having like a storybook kind of thing where you'd flip the page and go to the next mission or whatever. In this, it's like you're on this map and then you would either do one of these side quests or continue on this set path, and then sometimes those paths would diverge to be different if you want to go up in the mountains or you want to go down on this valley. But in this case, it'd be like, do you want to go with this girl and see her cutscene, or go with this other girl and see her cutscene?
This is like totally a dating game. What the hell?
It's kind of, but the thing is, like, I don't know how big it affected the story, because it would still show you developing that relationship with that person, like on the beach. Do you want to see this girl in a swimsuit or this? No, But this is actually, it was actually kind of nice because well, let me explain. But anyway, the characters like this one Inca, for example, she puts up a big front. Like she's very like she doesn't want to let anybody pry into her personal life at all. So she's very like cold and things like that. That kind of feeling where they don't want to.
She's actually a big softie.
Wait, is she the Dark Sin, by the way, or what's it called?
Yeah. Yep. Dark. Yep. She is. So she's the pretty much one of probably the best Lancer in the game. The ones that carry the big anti-tank guns. So yeah, she's a softie, but at the same time, it's like she's seen some real shit. So it's like you could understand where she was coming from, but. Throughout the game, though, it's like even at the end of the story, it's that the cutscenes were interesting enough, and then at the end of the game, the way things resolved, I went with Inca just because I'm talking about her a lot, but that's the person I chose to go with throughout the story, at least my first playthrough. And that game, I played for like 60 hours. That game is kind of long, and I was doing the side missions and stuff, but not getting too far off track. And it was great. I loved it. The story was great. The romance angle was actually well done. It's not like cheap moe stuff where it's they get overly into it and cutesy about it. It was like it felt like it was an adult romance, and that's what I kind of liked about it. It's like these characters. If
it's like the romance in Valkyria Chronicles 1, I'll be fine with it.
It is. Yeah. It's like that, but two of them, so it felt better. And you can choose these cutscenes, and so it's like it felt. Like it's just like the first one. Yeah.
I also hope that I'll probably get to it eventually. Valkyria Chronicles 3. I hope it's. I like some of the ideas presented in Valkyria Chronicles 2. Like I actually kind of like some of the segmented maps. There's like another.
The maps are bigger. In
yeah,
this one.
I know that they're bigger, but it's also Valkyria. I guess my main point was Valkyria Chronicles 2 added a lot of grinding. Like there were lots and lots and lots and lots of things to buy. In terms of like armor, weapons, and things like that, almost so many that you practically needed to do a number of extra battles to get them. So it kind of added this like grinding aspect to it. Yeah, farming, which I guess is it's like it's a portable game, and I guess sometimes you think it's more appropriate. I don't know, but like I hope it doesn't have as much as Valkyria Chronicles 2 did.
No, it really doesn't. For the most part, like with the tank. A tiny bit, but that's just how the tanks always were. Like you would want to change your the gun itself. You would change the armor and stuff like that. I mean, at least I don't know if this was in 2. I'm glad they removed the whole tread damage, which was annoying as hell. Like if your tread took much damage, you would move very slowly, and then it would be that your turn was over pretty much as soon as it started. At least with this, though, it's like for the most part, for all the characters. Either I changed them to an ace weapon and that was it for a long time because the weapons themselves didn't change much from upgrades, or I would change the grenade and the outfit that they wore. But that's pretty much it. Like I always had a ton of money, so I never like was without much. But then, like I said, I was doing the side missions, but those were quick, and some of them you wanted to do it like. Do the side mission, and then mortars won't be fired on your squad when you're trying to fight in the main story battle. It's like, oh, okay, I'll do that. So. By the end of that game, I had a ton of money. I had a ton of experience. I was never at a point where I needed to grind anything. It was more that I felt like I should do it just because later, I always felt like later, maybe it'll be kind of tough, but it never really got to that point. Even in the last battle, I was like, I don't really have anything else to spend my money on, so I guess I'm okay. Maybe when you're leveling stuff, but even the main story missions, you got a lot of return out of that, so it didn't feel like you needed to necessarily do it. I just did it because the game was so much fun, I wanted to do it. So.
I mean, that's kind of always the thing, Grinding is sometimes actually really enjoyable, like seeing your characters get better and getting more things if it's fun to play. But if it's that fine balance of if it becomes a chore, then it's that's when it's not so enjoyable.
Yeah, I love grinding, but not when it's like forcing me to do it. Like I want to do it because I like to see my characters powerful. Oh, you're going to make me do this before I have to get to a certain level before you let me advance. Like no. I flake my way through most RPGs. I don't need you to tell me what to do.
Yeah.
That's if you ever seen my Final Fantasy VII run, that was me flaking my way through it because I was up for like 36 hours playing that game. So I was like at the end I was like, let's fight Sephiroth. I was like, oh, I'm so tired.
I remember when I first played Final Fantasy VII, I didn't do any of the extra stuff, so like my Sephiroth battle took like hours. Like I'm sure he's probably like a piece of cake if you bother to do any of the side quests. But
I had Cure 2, but at that point, like just Cure 2.
You go straight to him, and the battle takes hours, and he keeps doing that ultimate attack where
fucking planets collide.
Yeah, it is like you have to sit through that every time. It's just like
he's turning everyone into frogs. You're like, son of a bitch, stop it.
I was very adamant when I was playing FF7. I need to have fucking Vincent in my party. Like, I need to have Vincent.
And he wasn't even that good.
Yeah, of course. Well, yeah, but like in boss fights, long boss fights in particular are annoying because you can't control Vincent when he goes in a limit.
No.
You can't. You can't. So you always have one gimmicked person in your fucking party. You're like, well, shit, fuck. I need to use limit. I can't just regular attack.
It was always Cloud, Tifa, and Cat Seath was always my three because Cat Seath, when he uses his slot machine, I forget what it's called, but the limit, it always helped out, and it worked out very well in my battles. So I always went with that group. And the death blows with Tifa were always amazing. So.
Anyways.
Yeah, other than that, there was a couple other announcements. We'll kind of quickly get through those. Natural Doctrine is announced that Nice America, Nippon Ichi America, they are localizing Natural Doctrine, the strategy RPG, which is a lot like Valkyria Chronicles, apparently. It comes out
this week.
Friday? Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Thursday, yeah, so a couple of days. So we'll see how that is. Then what else was there? Just quickly running through. I mean, they announced the new Atelier game, Atelier Shali, which is coming out very soon too.
I'd be surprised if that's not brought over because every game in the series has been brought over recently.
They're even talking about bringing that.
Shocked. Like I'm surprised. Like they haven't skipped a single beat. Like we need to localize every single game.
Yeah, and they made up for the fact that Atelier Isha didn't have a Japanese track with, Escanlaggio, which had one. So they're turning things around, and it's like, you're kind of bummed out that Gus was bought by them, but then after they've been doing this, it's like, oh, okay, you guys are actually doing a pretty good job.
Yeah.
Please. And Atelier Shali looks amazing. Like, the character models look great. They look exactly like their concept art, and it's a PS2 game still, so it's great. What else? Kingdom Under Fire 2, they're still talking about. I'm going through the site right now trying to see what else.
Atlas got a new logo.
Atlas got a
which looks like shit now.
It's very straight lines.
I don't like how the T in the logo is so squished. It's like very thin. Sorry, that's a very specific place.
Yeah, they back together.
Anyways, in the upcoming months, some of the big RPGs of the spring have already hit. In the upcoming months, there's a lot of Vita love for RPGs.
Yeah, we'll have reviews for Ragnarok Odyssey Ace I'm playing now. Demon Gaze will have. We'll surely have. Hopefully, we'll get something for Conception too. What are you guys covering for the upcoming couple months, though?
I'm excited for. Let's see. I don't think there's anything coming out for the remainder of Q2 that excite me.
Not a Drakengard 3 fan?
I'm not excited. I'll play it, but I'm not excited for it.
I'm not as familiar with Drakengard. What I was getting at, for like Vita games, the ones I had in mind are Conception 2, which it's coming out on 3DS as well, but seems to be better on Vita in terms of performance. Then there's Demon Gaze, which I know I've posted some news on it. I'm not totally familiar with, the reception of that game and how fun it's supposed to be or not. But anyways, that's coming out as well, which will be an interesting try. And then there's also Mind Zero from Axis later, which is kind of like, it looks like a Persona ripoff.
The art looks awesome, by the way. The art does look awesome.
Apparently it plays quite a bit different than Persona. It's not like a press turn like system like Persona it has, but we'll see. So there's a couple of games to try out. Something seems like slightly different types of dungeon crawling type games typically. So.
Yeah, I wonder. I'm trying to think about what else is coming out. I mean, I think Sacred 3 is coming out. They announced that for August, though, so that's sci-fi fantasy RPG. You don't see too many of those. What else is? I don't think there's much. There's not much else coming out, but there's a bunch of indie games coming out too. Coming this summer anyway. Like Hyper Light Drifter is supposed to be out for the Vita too, and that game looks great. But then Well, it's still obviously they keep announcing these games too, and you got some other titles coming out, like not just the Vita though, like coming out for the 3DS.
We know
like
Persona Q is coming sometime this year.
Yeah,
we know it's what, June in Japan, or is it July? It's sometime this summer.
It's June in Japan. Yeah.
And considering some of the other, or let's just go with Shin Megami Tensei 4, which was their most recent 3DS release, that only had like a 2-month turnaround for the localization, so Persona Q might be similar, at least for the United States.
They said, well, it's because, as I mentioned before, is that with Shin Megami Tensei 4 is that they worked side by side with the Japanese side to release that game here, so they were pretty much turned it around very quickly. So it's great to see that they're doing that, and it's great that they pretty much announced all of them are coming here, all the Persona games. So that was always really good news, you know. Apparently, God, what's that game called? I'm already blanking on it. The card game. I'm trying to remember what it's called.
Monster Monpiece?
Yeah, Monster Monpiece. That's supposed to be coming out very soon for the Vita, and we'll be covering that.
Isn't that the one that got super censored? Like,
yes.
No, they did censor a number of the cards, but
I know you're disappointed, Zach. It's okay.
I'm not. No, it's. I think it's funny how some people are, but that's just how some people tend to be. Some of those cards. The problem with, and I think I've probably touched about this before, is that when they're trying to submit something to the SRB, it costs them thousands of dollars to do it, and if they have to keep going back and back and back to it, it's like, how do you expect people to localize games if they're going to have to put up with those expenses as well?
Sure, it's like why they took out the middle finger in Tales of Exilio.
Hey, what? They did? I haven't heard about this.
I think we talked about this when Exilio came out. I think David was the one who wrote it up. I forget. But yeah, Auguria flips.
I don't remember. I didn't know about this at all.
Auguria flips Leia.
Oh, we did talk about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
The crazy girl with the
flips Leia off. And the Japanese one apparently doesn't do that in.
Really?
Yeah.
What a weird thing to take out. But obviously we got like a big list of RPGs coming out this year, and they keep announcing more of them. So it's very exciting. But like what I said is like this month's been really busy. We'll have a ton of new content up on the site very soon, more reviews and things like that. So keep checking back.
I need to catch up on some of the releases that have come out.
Oh my gosh!
I still plan on playing on Lightning Returns. I know it's gotten some criticism, but I want to try it out.
I plan on playing it sometime eventually too myself, because I have to still get through 13 though. But definitely, BlackRock. I'm supposed to. I keep saying I'm going to review BlackRock Shooter, but that'll be on the site hopefully like in a week. But other than that, like I said, a ton of content on the site. We have a lot of stuff planned. Just the road to E3 is coming up. It's very soon. Apparently there's going to be some pretty huge announcements at the show itself. I've been hearing some things about it myself. So with that in mind, I'd like to thank everyone for joining me today. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, David.
Yeah, always a pleasure to drop F-bombs for you.
No problem.
Keeping it up. All right. So, but for that, we're going to end it today on this April 1st edition of the TetraCast. Thanks a lot for coming, everyone. Catch you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Happy April Fool's.